Was about pickle jar. So the tagline reads converse, co-create and curate. So I wanted to know, what is it about cinema, about film, that you think sparks off conversation and sparks off discussions, open discussions?
See, cinema, for someone who started off as a journalist, is, I must say, it's come a little late into my life from the point of view of curating or organizing or as a medium to use. I have always been a consumer of cinema, and I've always been a very passionate consumer of cinema. I mean, I remember when I was in 12th standard, as the CBSE things get called, I used to really make notes of what's the lovely cinema I've watched and what's, stirred you. And then you also, cry, but you don't want anybody else to know that you've cried, and all those, this one, right? And very powerful kind of cinema that you've enjoyed. But from a curating point of view, what is it about cinema is, first of all, the, visual media is a step or two ahead of the other formats that we have. I mean, if we are it's good. Each medium has its own good points. I personally rate radio very high up there among all the things that I have done. But that said, cinema is, at the end of the day, it's a storytelling madhyam. It's a kind of medium, and that as opposed to just a series of moving images. In cinema, there is something that binds it. It might be a script, it might be a plot, it might be the screenplay, and even if there's just nothing spoken to it, even the way the images are being, tied together. So it makes it very relatable. You and I watching and being told to read a script versus, watching something up there. It does things with your emotions. It does things to you. One would like it to be put to as much good use, which is what I'm trying to do with Pickle Jar. Yeah.
So, ma'am, any upcoming project with Pickle Jar? Like, what is the next thing?
The thing with Pickle Jar is there is no set calendar, or at least let's say that right now it's such a baby, and it was born out of a really sheer accident. I don't know if you guys know that it's not, I didn't have any such lofty plans to say that, okay, I'm going to create a curating platform. No such thing. In fact, I was just on Facebook with someone to whom I forwarded a media article that I had just then got, and it was a very moving piece about an actor and who is no more, who died like 33 years back to be precise. But even now, for that generation of cinema watchers, is so iconic. It was about Smita Patil, and it was her contemporary Shabana Azmi writing about her. And I read that piece and I was like, wow, I mean, I should watch this cinema of that time. Though I am in a sense from the 80s and 90s generation. But I just put that out to my friends, saying that it would be so lovely that if I stop doing what I'm doing at the moment and let's just, watch movies. And this person is a senior journalist in Chicago, Mayank Chaya, and he just turned around and said, तुम पूरे शहर को दिखाओ, अब अकेले क्या देखोगी, मतलब. Till then I didn't have any such thought or idea. I said, really, I mean, how does that work? Okay, film festival I can organize, and that's how. And then of course reached out to a set of people who I had either known or worked with during my radio and television years, because all of us have any number of friends. But for me it was important to create a community of people who are going to enjoy working with each other. Sometimes, even if you're a genius, I mean, if you are really annoying and if if no one can work with you, then your genius can be thrown out of the window. But for me, it was essential that you should have that sort of a passion. You love the idea of accomplishing a film festival, and each one of us was as clueless as the other. Right from film rights to venue, to logistics, to getting the crowds in, to marketing. I mean,
foreign
For me, at
ideas.
some point, I felt being a journalist was easy. Entrepreneur is not. But yeah, I think people power at the end of the day.
Yes.
So we faltered, we learned, we are this thing, and we are still learning. So the project part, unless I figure out the economics and commerce of a film festival properly, I'm going to,
Keep it on hold.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, see, even we did one last month in Chennai, in December to be precise. And so there it was a place called Wandering Artist, and they were, he said, okay, Vasanthi, do you want to create something here? And he and I had been together on a US consulate program. So I said, okay, I mean, if you have the space, then at least I don't have to worry about where will this festival be. So it just happened, frankly, without me much planning about it. So if another stroke of luck happens, then Pickle Jar will have its 4th film festival. So 3 this far we've
Successful.
managed to.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my next question was about the gender sensitivity workshop that you recently conducted with 101 reporters.
Yeah.
So regarding
Not
that,
bad. How do you all know?
we come prepared.
Yeah.
Did our homework.
Stalking skills, maybe.
It's a great prerequisite for a journalist, yes, for a media person, yeah.
So regarding gender sensitivity in general when it comes to media, which of media's platforms or media's subsidiaries do you think gender sensitivity is most lacking? And how do we go about correcting this? How do we go about overcoming this?
I would not say any particular medium, because see, here's one thing that even sometimes I do media strategy workshops. Okay, it's one of the things, and I feel, and there it's institutions who reach out to understand this media. Now, what happens with the media is either you absolutely hate it, you kind of, God, you guys are sensationalizing all the time, you're misquoting this thing out of context, and so we are that. But there's also the other side, which says, oh God, if not for you guys, the story wouldn't have been out, right? So the media, people tend to think of it as a monolith and think good, bad. But what I always tell people is that you really have to look at it like, remember that story about the elephant and the 6 blind people that this thing, because it is what this part of the media I felt, which was so helpful. But then if the media proved to be an absolute insensitive, as the stalking kind of paparazzi kind of media, then I am not going to like it, and that's only fair, right? So, by which I mean that the media therefore has to be looked at in terms of the building blocks or the individual. This one, like there are independent voices. There is the big media. There is the big media which is now out to do a propaganda which has got nothing to do with the truth, right? Night after night it will get some 8 jokers, I'm sorry, on the studios, and then perpetrate the whole thing, and then it almost seems like that's the truth. But today we have to be sensitive and aware as consumers, saying, okay, so do I really believe this person? Okay, let me cross-check with what that website is saying. Maybe then I'll read up a newspaper, and then what is, an audio or a radio, though we don't really technically have news. But today's consumer literally has to fend for himself in finding out which is this sensible, sensitive media.
Credible.
And when you say about gender sensitive, which is the one, each media form is as guilty as the other. And each media form is as, let's say, responsible as something else. Sometimes, and this is my humble opinion, that it really boils down to that journalist or the person at the desk. Sometimes a journalist may be pretty insensitive. She or he may go ahead and name some rape victim. But the person at the desk may call back and say that, hey, listen, but you're not supposed to do this. I mean, this is not on. Right? So, there was one news item in Bangalore. Yeah, there was this mother and son who died in a car blaze 3 days back. The very strange kind of accident, and the car caught fire. And this was in a newspaper's front page. it said this, and then of course the thing caught fire. The husband, of course, was away at work, and then the last. So this couple was living at number 47. This thing, apartments and prestige, whatever, Bangalore. I said, हाँ बता दो ना, मतलब phone number भी this thing. Is there anything left to privacy? Can you please respect the dignity of somebody who's just lost his wife and child? So at the workshop we were only, and I wasn't the one. I mean, of course, there were two very senior colleagues, Amu Joseph and Lakshmi Murthy, humongously experienced who were sharing aspects of coverage of, I mean, what certain phrases and terms that you use or you should not use, especially when it comes to sexual minorities, transgender. So a lot of these things were covered.
Going back to journalism, you had mentioned on your website that being your first venture into the field of media, that is the most special job you've held. But I wanted to know, what were the specific challenges that you faced
in journalism?
In journalism, considering how it can get a little competitive to the point of being a little cutthroat, and it's quite fast paced. So what were the challenges that you faced?
For me, two major challenges. One challenge was from within, that I do not know enough. I used to feel a lot of times saying, damn, I should know more about this to be able to go in depth into it and bring out the actual nuances of a story. But the nature of journalism is such, particularly with television media, that you are, and that too in a bureau, when you are really doing, everybody is doing everything. There is no luxury of saying that, okay, I will cover only politics or I will cover only defense deals or something. It's not like. So, to a lot, I remember feeling, when I was covering Mangalore, the number of times I've come to Mangalore, that Dakshina Kannada gave journalists enough reasons in those years. The communal clashes, the church attacks, the pub attacks, I remember the MRPL issue, there was the land issue, there was also a documentary that I came back to work on, which was because I personally felt that the media was becoming very one-sided in even the Dakshina Kannada issue. Of course, it was terrible what the incidents that were happening, but I personally felt that what is the pulse of the people? What are Dakshina Kannada people themselves feeling? So I had travelled across this thing. I remember Beltangadi, Uppinangadi, and meeting the Islamic side of people, to VHP, to Bajrang Dal, I think I also remember speaking to the Christian community, the Roman Catholics in Mangalore, to understand what was going on. Now that sort of thing is what I have always loved doing, to be actually go beyond the surface reporting.
Yes.
But the challenge is that the next breaking news story is upon us. Right? So I can't say that I'm sorry sitting in Dakshin Kannada, you now go figure out the defense deal that's being that's this thing in the context of Aero India that's happening in Bangalore. So you really have to be, in a way, omnipresent and then quick on your feet. That sometimes led to hilarious situations. When there was a fire, I think some fire incident, luckily there were no casualties in Bangalore, that particular incident. I was sitting in a farm in GKVK, there's a thing called Gandhi Krishi Vignan Kendra, because that day I was thinking, okay, this is a dull news day. So I told my news people in Delhi, the news desk, that today I'm going to do this story about this scientist who has come up with a new mango species.
Okay.
I said, yeah, Vasanthi, I think, aaj to kuch zyada nahi dikh raha hai. Okay, fine. So me and my camera person go, and this is in the outskirts of Bangalore, near the present airport, and we are doing this interview, and I'm setting the frame. The scientist is sitting below the mango tree, and I'm telling my camera person, this beautiful, I want this, like this, can you, set it, etc. And he's also telling me, I was telling him, I said, sir, so what prompted you to name this? It was called Aishwarya, the variety. So I thought, okay, I'm sure it's either the film actor or some such, God knows what it is. So I was telling him, I said, what prompted you to name this species Aishwarya? Madam, that is my daughter's name. Having this absolutely profound conversation, and suddenly somebody tips me off saying, Vasanthi, I think there's a fire in a pub somewhere in central Bangalore. And so we just had to excuse ourselves from this mango scientist after setting up all this stuff. Told him, Ms. Itza Inundina will come. And then we literally rushed back from there. But by the time, within 10 minutes of my stepping out of the Agricultural University campus, I was live on air because I'm on the phono. Right? So they were like, okay, so there are news of fire coming in central Bangalore. Let's now go across to Vasanthi Hariprakash, who joins us from the Bangalore Bureau. And I know next to nothing about that fire details. I only know central Bangalore, but I don't know how many fire engines or, right? That day, and there is no time to, because simultaneously I'm trying, and luckily it's an audio. I'm on the phone line. So I'm trying to get the fire department. Those lines are busy. My camera person is also trying to help me out. And with all this chaos, I am live on air, telling the nation what's happening in Bangalore. And the art of not saying anything, despite saying some 300 words. I think I kind of mastered that day. Because I didn't want to give out false news. It's my credibility at stake.
Yes.
So then just saying, because I'm saying, okay, where in central Bangalore? Then suddenly there's somebody said, okay, this is on Brigade Road or this thing. So I said, okay, so give us a sense, Vasanthi, what is it? Oh yeah, it's a commercially very, very busy area. It's got many establishments and this thing and promenade, and I'm busy describing MG Road's delights in the sense of promenade and all that. But like, please, can someone get me off the phone? I need to find out what's the fire about. Where is it? And by the time we made our way into this one, because this was 2010-11, and it wasn't like now when I could parallelly just switch on and probably online someone would have posted it, right? Like Twitter and so much of... So it was pretty hilarious. And when actually, and it turned out, finally, I will not name the building, though I hadn't actually named any particular feature, but for anybody knowing Bangalore, they would have understood what I'm referring to. Because in my mind, the person who had then found out from the office, somebody had called, etc. And then when we went, I'm like, damn. Of course, it to the extent that, you corrected that lapse within the next time they put you on phono, you are safe, as in... But these are the things that completely can be, because you are not the kind to put out false report. But the nature of the television medium is such that there is no breathing time. There is no, and particularly if you're on live, you've said it. So these kind of challenges, of course, at one level it's very interesting. I remember having a laugh that day saying, good God, this is is this what I learned in J school or, things like that. But the lack of one's own understanding and knowledge of any subject, which is practically speaking, you cannot know about, mango species, depth to the fire history in this one. So it's not feasible. At the same time, when you're reporting on any particular issue, let's say the RTE, for example, then you really need to know the context of and the history of the struggle to bring that legislation up to that point. Right? So, but you're also working on other stories at that time. So it used to be very frustrating at one level. But even within that, when you could do your own thing and people would come back and say, hey, that was a good report, then you felt, I said, okay, this has been worth it.
Rewarding.
Yeah, it was. It can be, sometimes it just gets to you. It's madness. It's like...
So, drawing this to a close, we'll just have one question each. Is that okay? So, my question
I'm all yours. Yeah.
So, you constantly emphasize conversations and telling full stories, and being a radio jockey as well as being a host, you've talked about how you talk to celebrities and the common man. So, that is a skill that a lot of people still struggle with, to be able to talk fluidly and to be able to talk comfortably with people from different walks of life. But we all know how important that is. So how do you suggest we go about developing this? And if there was one skill that you'd consider most essential for any media professional, be it in any field, what is that one skill?
It's a beautiful question, and I would love, so I'll enjoy this answering because I feel it's somehow at the core of it all, and I don't necessarily mean for us to be journalists really, as much as it is to do with really, at the bottom of it all, just a good person,
Human.
in a way, yeah. So if you were to, if it were, there are aspects to it, but if you really ask me for one skill or trait, I would say empathy. If you have that first, it's like the first line, very first. After that you can, the felicity with languages, the fact that even if, I may not know Kannada at all, I might have landed from somewhere in the north, fair enough, or I might land from, but if I'm going to act as if like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I don't know Kannada, but I am not a Kannadiga, I learned Kannada after coming here. But I'm saying that something as basic as that can totally put your subject off. And then the loss is yours. You are not going to get the story out of that person as genuinely as it would have if that person had known that you are interested in listening to his story. Which is why the skill of empathy, I cannot emphasize more on this. By empathy, I do not mean the tear-jerking kind of this thing and a VP, even in a print story sometimes, that's, you put out a story which may seem as if it is, let's say if you're talking about Manrega, or if you're talking about, let's say, minimum wages. Now the story is about a certain class in our own country which doesn't have that kind of an earning power in this thing. Now, but by that I do not mean necessarily to only take the side of the people. I'm not saying that at all. Your thing will still be to give balance and perspective and all that. But it should have that empathy of saying that what is that person going through, which should be brought out in the story, but with facts. It's not like you should reach out for the tissue moment I read my stories. In fact, sometimes I get annoyed when people try to manufacture this sort of thing because I do not want to have an element of pity. Not like saying that, they are this class of section that do not have. It's not like that. But I'm saying that you put out the facts. Say the fact is that with this kind of earning and with this kind of, per capita that we are talking about, and let's say this is the price of pulses, food grain, etc., this is what it is. Right? So that story has the thing of touching literally the life of that person. But at the same time, it's not like an emotional this thing as much as it is an intelligent case for why that person is entitled to that. Nobody is doing any favor. Likewise with conversations, like one of the things which was sort of caught on my social media, on the Facebook thing, was it was the most natural thing for me to do when I'm in a cab and just talking to the cab guys. And I didn't think of this as, okay, now did we today get a fantastic story? I'm not thinking of that. I'm just genuinely interested in thinking, okay, there's this whole cab economy in Bangalore and of course the whole country. So I am just thinking, okay, now this person who's driving the car is possibly a person who has some land or probably was working on some land somewhere. This is the sense I get from looking at the person. But just by your experience of being an Indian, you don't need some rocket science to know that. Then you're just asking him. And then he comes, he says, yeah, this is what in Chennai, this time there has been no monsoons there at all. So in trying to understand this, you also, because sitting in Bangalore, I'll have my comfortable water supply. Nothing, I will not have a dent on my daily life. But by that empathy to that person, you are actually not just drawing that story out and putting it to somebody who may not have thought of that angle at all. And it's his life. So sometimes there's this guy who went to jail somewhere in Madhya Pradesh, I remember. He was saying about how, literally it was a life of crime, etc. because कहाँ कोई नौकरी नहीं थी मैडम, हम कुछ करना भी चाहते थे तो कुछ नहीं था वहाँ पर, and a young guy and got into a life of crime, etc. Went to jail and then suddenly told himself, what kind of miserable life have I got it on myself? The moment I'm out of this, I'm going to remake my story. Comes out and puts a chai shack, a chai shop. And he told me that आपको अच्छा नहीं लगेगा सुन के कि कहाँ में लगता है. And this is all just a cab ride from NGMA, where my film festival was happening, our pickle jar thing, the National Gallery of Modern Art, to my house, which would have probably some max 40 minutes because it was late at night. And he's telling me, he said, you won't like it where it was. It was near. So I said, nahi, matlab, who am I to judge you at this thing? Nahi, madam, it was near a brothel, he told me. And therefore business was brisk, you know. And he said, it landed up giving me back a livelihood and lot of money because everybody used to come to that place. And then he said, okay, now that I have some money saved up, I should not do this any further and I should escape this place. And then he comes to Bangalore and, starts driving a cab and then is good and savvy at it, invests in this thing. And at the time he spoke to me, even the body language of the guy was like of this confident entrepreneur. So he was telling me, he said, मेरे पास अभी 3 गाड़ियाँ हैं, एक मैंने अपने भाई को बुलवा लिया है. And I was like, and I remember doing a Facebook live and not only just put a post, but I actually said, okay, this is now a big story, like, and it's so inspiring.
It is.
Yeah. And so he said, I said, there are, let's take the गाड़ी to the side. And he initially was like, अच्छा मैडम ऐसे ऐसे हाँ मुझे कोई जल्दी नहीं है आपको है तो नहीं and he was of course very thrilled. And then we kind of drew to a side and we put that out and everyone's like, man, how did you do this? Can you kind of give us some tips on how to? Because he said, हाँ मैं इतना पैसा कमाता हूँ, this is the rent I pay. And at the end he said, and then he blushed a bit. I said, अच्छा क्या हुआ? नहीं मैं बाप बनने वाला हूँ. And then so it was a total human interest story without anybody having to go and say, today this is my deadline. There are people around us. There are these things which we just have to listen in. And sometimes, and most of the time I don't even talk, I just listen, the most fascinating thing. And now, the day before yesterday, in fact, I was coming back from a Azim Premji Foundation, this thing, they do a very beautiful program with school children across the country, Earthian it's called. I was just coming back and this gentleman again, who used to be Dhirubhai Ambani's driver.
Right.
So, coming back, of course, this was just one series. I hashtagged it as Cabby Conversation. But often, the greatest stories that are written, in fact, one of them I certainly want to share tomorrow morning when I speak with you all, comes from the least, it's not any, the person I'm speaking about is not any star journalist. But just that story she wrote while all of us were having tea and only she had that little side conversation. And she then wrote a story and I was like, how come I didn't think of this? So it is clearly the empathy of that person that worked. She was interviewing a journalist from Kashmir, and what the life of that journalist in Kashmir has been, which is a reality that all of us should know. But, her mother used to be under detention, so it's children at home waiting for the mother who's in police custody. So it opens out, it's almost like a cinema, it's before our eyes. And for that reason alone, I just think of myself as supremely lucky to be a storyteller. Journalist or non-journalist, but in the media. It's a privilege.